has an extensive climbing background. I think he's just all around very knowledgeable. He has a lot of resources online that he offers to arborists, and he should be full of a plethora of information. And he is very much into engagement, so please ask questions as he goes through his presentation.
Yes, full of it is right. We do want you to interrupt. Go like this, or just say, hey, and let's hear what it is that you want answers to. We'll try and answer your questions. I'm direct. If you ask me a question, I'm going to give you a straight answer. So the politics is a big part of it. I have been dealing with people looking over my shoulder, second guessing what I've done for a long time. And I've developed a little packet of 5 things where there is no way that I missed anything. So later on, if they try and trip me up and say, hey, you said this or that, and I go, well, wait a minute, item number 3 in my 5-step tree inspection protocol says, so let's go through it. There's no handout. This would be a really good one to take notes, because I'm going to, you can just write down 1 through 5, and I'm going to give all 5 of them to you right now, before I even start. Okay, when you walk up to a tree, depending on whether you just got out of your truck and you're across the street walking towards the tree, or if you're standing right next to the tree looking at the tree, you're going to look at 5 different plant structures. Okay, so the first one, of course, is the root zone of the tree. It's called the root crown. It's where the tree vanishes below ground. It's usually tapered out wide, and it's a big foot that the tree is sitting on. And there's usually indications of where the roots are coming off of that trunk. You need to use your imagination. You need to imagine where are the roots. Where are the roots of this tree? They're depending on your expertise to predict underneath the soil probably where will we find the roots on this tree. And that way you can limit your impact. So as we go through our little slideshow, we're going to talk about the next item above the roots, which is the trunk. The next item above the trunk, which is the branches. The next item above the branches, which is the twigs. And the last one is the leaves, the foliage. So say you're across the street, you just got out of your truck. Leaves, twigs, branches, trunk, roots. Boom. You guys now have a green thumb. You can now explain to anybody, and you can deflect all of their arguments where they're trying to talk about 3 different things. You can say, well, wait a minute, are you talking about the roots? Are you talking about the twigs? Are you talking about the foliage? And you'll remember back. You will store which of the most significant problem areas are things you're going to find out about. So as you're looking at these different plant structures, you're going to jump ahead in your assessment. You're going to already decide where you're going to end up. You're going to work backwards and you're going to justify. Say you were walking under there and you can just feel this little mist, and you know you got a whole bunch of beetles chewing away up there and they're dropping all this sap on you. Okay? You're going to forget about the roots. You're going to forget about the trunk. Okay? You know you've got your problems in the foliage. Okay? So I didn't go to the disease talk this morning, but I've been around trees that have foliar issues. Like, for example, fruit trees. Fruit trees are full of sap with sugar in it, and it is candy to bugs. So bugs love to chew on the leaves of these fruit trees. Pear trees, by August, the leaves are in tatters because it's free lunch for every termite in the neighborhood. Every condominium association member is chewing on the leaves of fruit trees. And you direct your investigation to the most likely place where you're going to have problems with this tree. So I don't know what you're going to do with the information. We haven't even talked about what's going to happen to this information. since we've already eliminated 4 out of the 5, okay? Notice how I'm jumping ahead. You know, I am giving you the respect of knowing that you already know a lot of this stuff. And the only thing I've done for you is I've given you 5 little tags, 5 push pins, 5 post-it notes, and where you can stash this stuff away in your brain and make an argument. So that's kind of my system. When I deal with a client, I always teach them this 5-step system. Always. Even the lady that's holding the baby, I teach her that thing. And I can see if her eyes glaze over about point number 3, I'm kind of wasting my time. The feedback that I'm getting from you people right now, I need it. Because I need to know if we're ready to move on, if we're going to go to more in-depth investigation. Okay? And where can this end up? I mean, we can talk about getting an increment borer out to look at what the internal condition of the wood is. You know, I don't know if has anybody here ever used an increment borer? Okay, it's a hollow drill bit. You screw it in there, and you pull out a core sample that shows you all of the tree rings. Okay, so that's. Let's talk about the 3 different degrees of intensity of inspection. Okay, there's 3 of them that are commonly used in a system called tree risk assessment. Okay, so there is a credential that you can obtain called a tree risk assessment qualification, and if you become a tree risk assessor that's qualified, then you have to know what some of the advanced methods of tree inspection are going to be. See how we're doing here. Slideshow. This is not my department. I'm a tree guy. Begin slideshow.
Okay.
Did you think you got someplace?
So,
Fire that slideshow up. Like, what if you clicked on that second one now? Oh, that looks good. What if you hit the right arrow? There we go. Tree secrets revealed. Oh my goodness. You guys are getting all my best stuff. That's great on the lights. Thank you. Really appreciate that. So, we have to imagine what the internal wood structure looks like. Is this wood punky? Well, you can tell by looking at the leaves, you can tell by looking at the bark, you can tell by looking at all kinds of different things. But the biomechanics are the plumbing system encased in the structural support wood. Come on up front, we got a bunch of chairs up here, people. We got some new folks joining. We're revealing the tree secrets. You got here just in time because we're talking about biomechanics. So the term biomechanics was coined by a guy named Klaus Matic, and I have been criticized for being a name dropper. I am about to drop some names on you people. And Klaus Matic is the author of many books, and let me just tell you, because I realize that facts about trees are boring. It's the personalities that are the important thing. When that eye contact, that lady holding that baby, when you talk to her and you become her friend, you enable her. You allow her to know a 5-step system that qualifies her as as someone with a green thumb. You've taught her that trees have roots, they have trunks, they have branches, they have twigs, and they have leaves. She's going to remember that. Usually, when someone comes up to you and they say, tell me about trees, you can launch into a big long spiel, and it can end in a work order, it can end in a tree pruning contract, it can end in a bunch of ways. And then later they're talking to somebody, and that other person says, well, what did Ox talk about? What did the tree guy say? And you know what the answer is? He said it would be $1,750. Was there anything in there about the condition of the tree? Was there anything in there about what pruning was going to be done to be worth paying $1,750? No, because they don't understand it. So we have to make them understand it. And the way we do it is by talking about the plumbing system that is encased in this cylinder of wood. Okay? If you don't know how that fluid is transported throughout that tree, there's going to be trouble. So, what do? You educate yourself. You have to understand tree physiology. Flat out. How many people? We got like 50 people in here. You people need to become experts on tree physiology. Sorry, that's the way it is. Say, for example, you aspire to greatness and you want to pass the test for becoming a certified arborist or a tree risk assessor or a qualified tree safety practitioner through the Tree Care Industry Association. Say you want somebody else to see these badges, like I got a badge here, you know. They want to know that you know what you're talking about. If you don't understand tree physiology, you've skipped the class. So you have to be able to know plant identification. You got to know tree physiology. You got to know about biomechanics. So let's talk about how wood fractures and how Mr. Klaus Matic wrote all these books about how he compared hollow tree stems to steel pipes that went through oil refineries. Now, Klaus Matic was an engineer, and he studied oil refinery fires. And he found out that when the steel heated up, the parts of the factory that caught on fire softened the metal, and right where it collapsed, he knew that was the weak spot. And then they went on to design stronger oil refinery factories that wouldn't collapse at just a minor fire. So later he got hired to compare the hollow tree stem, which is a tube, to a steel pipe. And so he came up with all the mathematical principles. And he came up with a bunch of formulas. And I don't understand those formulas because I'm not a mathematician. But Klaus Matic became famous with his cartoons, and he drew a little cartoon character of a hedgehog that he named Stupsy. Stupsy, Klaus is German. So he has this cartoon animal explaining all of the different mechanical principles that allow a heavy tree to be supported by a slender stem. And when trees fail, he got hired to be a consultant to either defend or to prosecute the plaintiff or the defendant in lawsuits involving personal injury. High dollar lawsuits. And I don't know, you know, and that is one of the things that you can aspire to. You can become a registered consulting arborist, RCA, with a badge from the American Society of Consulting Arborists, for example. There are so many places to go upwards beyond just running the chainsaw, throwing branches in the truck. So I've had just a wonderful experience meeting Klaus and going to court, learning how to testify as an expert witness, where you don't have any opinions after you swear on that Bible. Your opinion is a legally accepted matter of fact that can't be disputed. It's a wonderfully empowering way to take the knowledge of your study, where you figured out what the tree physiology was, you figured out where the weak spot was, you figured out how rotten the branch was, and what was the straw that broke the camel's back that caused this branch to fracture and killed this 3-year-old on a bicycle, and his parents are suing for $6 million. And there is a lot at stake when this responsibility is handed to you. So I'm not just saying learn how to inspect trees so that you can, you know, be out of there by 11:30 and go to lunch. I'm saying so that you can be a consummate professional, which is what your I call them customers. I'm in commercial, but if you work for a municipality, you have bosses, you have citizens. Everybody is looking for answers from you. And if you don't have the answers, if you don't have the ability to understand the secrets of biomechanics, then that's why you're here today. So come today. Oh, by the way, here's my plug for what's happening at 2 o'clock. As soon as I get done here, I'm going to be talking about redwood tree climbing. There you go. Okay, so what does the arborist do? The word care there is item number 2. The arborist specializes in the care of the urban forest. So what is care? You know, how can we modify a plant to improve it? That's hard to do. These plants are nigh on perfect. They've been living, without us for millions of years. So for us to want to care for a tree is kind of presumptuous. It involves a sense of pride. Wow, I know more than Mother Nature. I'm going to fix this tree. Okay, so the citizens, they don't know that trees are really stupid, and they grow all wrong. They grow in bad ways. They'll take the sun, they'll take the wind, they'll go wrong sideways. And we do have to fix them. So there you go. You're the right person for the job. You can analyze the structure of that tree. You can look at it and figure out how the weight is being distributed inefficiently by the tree. And then through tree surgery, cutting branches, you can improve the tree structure. That's fantastic. And you've all already accomplished that. You all have that in your job description. You will modify tree architecture. You're going to turn that tree into something that's about ready to go, and you're going to prolong its life. It's pretty common that if you take a tree from the time it's planted, right out of the nursery, and you prune it 3 times in the first 10 years, you are going to double the lifespan of that tree. Many, many trees go wrong in their first decade. And you can fight over the numbers. Some people say 5 years, take that where you will. But I commend the arboriculture industry for tackling this job of fixing millions and millions of trees. But we fail. We can't get there often enough. We can't get there early enough. And we end up cutting down about half of the trees that we're ever called on to look at. And this 50% pruning, 50% removal is kind of a problem for our industry because we are condemning half of our patients. If we were medical doctors, right? You can't have a doctor lose half of his clients. Sometimes I have worked on trees and become attached to them. And when they go, it hurts me. I lose sleep. I've had clients cry, okay? I've shed a tear or two now and then. So I think that, this responsibility that we have is something that's quite significant, and we need to own up to it. So I'm going to jump on to the next slide. I think we've kind of kicked this one to death. And what would happen if I went like that? Ha! Okay, so the greenscape. I don't know what you call an urban forest. Here's a word, greenscape. The tree is the most visible sign that you're in an ecosystem. What is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is various conditions that reinforce each other and are self-perpetuating or sustainable. Okay, so what are the 5 components of an ecosystem? That was on my other slideshow that the tech couldn't enable. But besides trees and plants, the understory, the urban forest, there is this land. Okay, there is the soil and the roots embedded in that soil. There is water that infiltrates into that soil. There is the air that the trees grow up into and allow sunlight to penetrate. And then there are animals, there are the inhabitants, the vertebrates and invertebrates. So there's 5 parts of the environment. As long as you guys are writing stuff down, you got 1 through 5, just write down plants, soil, water, air, and people. Okay? People, wolves, whoever lives in the forest. I'm giving you 5s. Usually people can only remember 3s, but I'm giving you 5s because you've got notepads right in the center of your thing. Later on, somebody's going to ask you, what was said at this conference? I paid you to spend a couple days. I paid for your lodging. I paid for your food. What did you learn there from the tree guy? Well, you just learned 5 things. Okay? Let's give you 5 more things. What are the 5 functions of wood? Question.
What was number 5?
The people, the inhabitants, the animals, the denizens of the world. What are the 5 functions of wood? Are you telling me that I'm out of time?
No, I was going to show you. I think I can get to you to the pictures that you want.
Oh, you could. This text is just putting me to sleep. Who's nodding now?
Are you wanting these?
Yes. Okay, that's it. How on earth did you do that? We're going to put you on the payroll, Katie. All right, so you can see this lady right here. Oh, look at this. I flew on the airplane with this. Ha! Ha! Something works. See that lady? All right, so she's walking through this forest planted in 1916. These 2 trees right here were condemned by a Japanese landscape architect. And so these 2 trees are the N2 trees, and there's 9 more down here in a row. So there was a row of 11 trees. So my job was to inspect these 2 trees and corroborate whether the Japanese landscape architect was out to lunch. He was. He wanted to expand the Japanese garden and put in a bamboo garden right where those 2 trees are sitting. Those are the 2 best trees. And so you people, you're already experts. So you know that on the row of 11 trees, these ones were on the west side. These ones got all the sun. These were the 2 biggest trees. These were the 2 best trees. And they were the 2 strongest trees. And there was no reason to cut them down. Next slide, Katie. Oh, Katie would have put me on the payroll. Look at this, I don't have to do anything. Okay, so here's a long shot. So there, 105-year-old trees. I was the out-of-town expert with a briefcase. I was on my way to Reno, driving from Seattle, and my friend is the parks director here, and this is the city of Ashland. Now, this is a famous garden, this Japanese garden. It's in Lithia Park. It's in the city of Ashland, Oregon, which is 9 miles north of the California border. And it was designed around pre-World War I by the designer of New York Central Park, a famous dynasty of father and son landscape architects that dominated the design of modern America. So you can see that the 2 trees on the right are a little bit bigger than the rest of the trees in the row. All right, let's look at some more. I think there's half a dozen pictures in here. So this was what the roots looked like after we took an air gun and we blasted all the soil out of there so we could see what was going on underground. Now earlier I said that you have to use your imagination. I didn't have to use my imagination. This had already been done before I walked up. This was a big aid to my investigation into the condition of the 2 trees. The other 9 were supposed to stay, only the 2 big ones, which are these 2 right here. And next slide, please. So you can see back in here, these are all these 80-year-old Japanese maple trees. There's a lot of conifer trees, fancy little cryptomeria. And they wanted to bring that garden, which ends right here at this pathway, and they wanted to bring it out to right here to put in a bamboo garden. Next slide, please. And just coincidentally, I was looking at these 2 trees from way down the road, And I saw these turkeys and I thought, well, you know, this is like the city council who are approving this Japanese landscape architect's plan. Sorry to all the landscape architects in this room. Have I done character assassination on anybody? No. I just happened to see a flock of turkeys. So these are the two trees in question. You can see that they're much larger. They hang over this Japanese garden, and the Japanese architect was complaining that this little bit of lean, which is off, so the sunlight is out in the west there, made the trees risky. So I did a tree risk assessment. I filled out the tree risk assessment evaluation form, which is a 2-page checklist of about 60 different features of the trees. If you want an education, you look at one of those checklists and it will show you that there is no way you could leave anything out in your tree inspection. So my part of tree inspection, the thing that I want you to understand is that later on, that's when the shit hits the fan. It's not when you're standing there. Maybe you and another guy go up there and you're walking around the tree a couple times. That isn't where the problem is. The problem is later, when you have to justify your decision to a non-technical authority. All right, so here's what we do. This is like a no-brainer. This is an example of another project. This happened a couple years ago. This is a client, big tree here, and some smaller trees right in here, but there was a creek right here. So the city has these rules that say you can't cut down the trees next to the creek. So they wanted me to decide, if these trees were risky. Keep going. All right, so now this is an aerial photo that I pulled off of Google Earth of that same thing. And the creek is like right in, you can see it goes right in through here where all these big old trees are, and it comes up and it goes around. And then here is that spruce tree, the tree in question. There will always be a tree in question. And that means that it's you're the sheriff, and there's Billy the Kid right there. So you have to say, I shot him down. Or he's out to lunch, he's a turkey, we're going to save him. You are Julius Caesar. You've got thumbs up and thumbs down. That's your power. Because you did your homework, you understand biomechanics, you understand tree physiology, you understand the function of wood. Oh, we never got to the function of wood. We had a slideshow. Okay, so what is the function of wood? I'm just going to go back to kindergarten right now and give you the 5 things that wood do. Wood does. Okay, first off, wood holds the tree up. Okay, and then when you cut a tree down and you look at it, there's all these black lines going in circles round and round and round, and that is where the trees set up defense barriers. So one of the functions of wood is to change its chemical composition to become resistant to rot. Okay, the cells are hollow. Okay, one of the functions of wood, trees store food. Okay, one of the functions, they're hollow and they're in long tubes. They transport fluid up and down. And then the last thing that trees do, which is really hard to see, the wood in trees has these little sideways vents that exhaust the carbon dioxide sideways out through pores in the bark called lenticels. Okay, so those are the 5. Can somebody read me the list of 1 through 5 functions of wood? Who wrote this down? Just go ahead.
Holds the tree up, change chemical composition, store food, transport fluid, and exhaust CO2.
Okay. So change composition, that means defense. The tree defends itself against decay by creating barriers. All right, so now I've given you 3 lists of 5. Right off the top of my head, I'm amazed that I'm remembering all this stuff, because now we're going to go into our slides again. What do we got here? Okay. Next slide, please.